Hey there, so a few little updates happening around the software. First of all, I did quite a lot of optimization. As you can see here, it runs at 100 frames a second. I used to have it throttled down to almost or better, choked down to almost 60 frames a second. And then I did some optimization. Plenty of calls I made were completely unnecessary. Every object asking each other what to do. And basically, I implemented an event system, or I used Unity's event system. And so now only the object is talking that actually needs to talk. Everyone else is listening. And that boosted my frame rate up to 980 something, which then meant I could throttle down the software actively. And now it runs at 100 frames a second and uses maybe 2 to 3% of the CPU, which is just fine. 100 frames a second means 10 milliseconds of processing time. That means the data I'm working with is on average 5 milliseconds old, which I think is just fine for motion queuing. Everything under 20 milliseconds from joystick motion to servo motor is, I think, is not noticeable as a human being. Something else that I did is crash detection. So I used to have no crash detection. That means a crash looked like this. Horrible mess. And then I implemented a crash detection where certain limiters allowed only certain values to pass. Well, that was slightly better, but still not that really good. Well, here's the logic as it's implemented now. So you have these exceedance detectors in plenty of channels. Like right now I have 6, it might be 8 or 10 in the end. And each of these exceedance detectors detects an exceedance, reports it to the crash detector that then actively latches all the other exceedance detectors. So when one of those detects an exceedance, all other channels get latched on their last good value. And that's something that I learned is in motion queuing, you can't have just one channel change, or you can't have one signal just change, not even faded over. But you always have the sim in one coherent, plausible state. That's why I have all of these 6 detectors latched in the last state. So it's kind of frozen. The sim isn't frozen, but the state of the sim is frozen. The crash detector informs this light. When the light is pushed, it goes into orderly reset, as I call the function, which then makes sure that all signals are good and whether or not a crash is present, and then unlatches these data streams, and it sends a signal to the start-stop logic that will drain the filter. Again, they need to be drained. It's going to take a few seconds for the old data to be depreciated, basically, and the new data to build up. And once that is done, the indicator gives a gray light. That means you can start, and then the start-stop logic, think of it as a clutch in a car, will allow the motion data to flow to the actual hardware only once it is ensured that there is a coherent and plausible state in the entire rig on all of the channels. That's actually was a lot trickier than I thought it was going to be. Another interesting point that I implemented is a fade in via a cosine curve. So as I start and stop the motion, I used to have it linearly interpolated between a pause and an active position. Now I have that cosine function that you can see here. And the reason why I have that cosine function is that the start and the stop of the fading in and out of the signal has to have tangency with the actual signal. If it doesn't, there is a corner in that in the signal, and that corner means if you differentiate it, if you differentiate it, you get a big spike, and that's a whole lot of mess. And the hardware, I can literally see the hardware making these big jumps. So I had to have ensure tangency, and I did that with the cosine function. So when I fade in and out, you can probably see it later in the 3D representation. It's a very, very smooth. It's not just filtered. It's important. It's tangency. So that's why it has to be a cosine function. The next thing I finally implemented is a panning system to move the view around. I used to have only one view, or these isometric views here. Now I can pan around, zoom out, and zoom in, so that makes it a lot more accessible, a lot easier to use for everyone. And everyone wants to look at it at a different angle, so that's what you can do here. And I'm still thinking about giving it an option to display it in VR, because it's really nice for tuning the rig without having hardware, but that's coming some point in the future. So first of all, the panning system, it's a great improvement, I think. Then the next big point is the configuration. So you can click this, I'm using a crank arm system. That means you're getting the crank arm system implemented here. I don't have it yet ready to be exported to the controller down here, but at least the geometry is working. And something else that I find really interesting is that you can load and save different setups, and you can flip these actuators to other positions, like the phantom position on the other side of the sphere, and that works all quite nicely, and I'm quite satisfied with it. Especially the load and save system that I have here saved me a lot of work switching from one rig to another one. So once you hit the fly button, you can actually see the motion coming in. Here you can see server, client connected. Now as you click on fly, you see the motion data coming in. If you go from park to pause, you see that it's gradually fading over from one to the other and not in a linear fashion. Once that's done, you can go from pause to motion, and you see that as I fly around, the amplitude of the rig will increase. What you see now is a drop in frame rate that's due to the motion, due to the video capturing software. If I do it without it, then it's a rock solid 100 frames, and I can bump it up to like well over 900. So that's what happens here. If you crash the rig, this is what happens, and this is now including the active crash protection. So you will see that the rig shows pretty much no reaction at all. Here you get these red dots indicating which. So here, oh, now they're clear. Damn it! So you get these. Sorry, I just reset the simulator. So you get these red dots that tell you which value was the one that had an exceedance and that triggered the crash detection. You see the rig is now crash detected. If you click that indicator light, it will recovering the rig. So you see it goes gradually back to the pause position. Now it's in the paused position, and now the next step is draining the filter. So let the old data basically go out. Let the new data build up, and now the rig is in a state where it is in a 0 position. The simulator sends 0. Everything is actually now in one coherent state. So if I now go from pause to motion, which is nothing coming in, but you see no reaction. If I didn't do the draining of the filters, every switching on and off of the motion would mean that there is a big jolt in the rig, and that draining of the filters 5 seconds, that really took care of all of that. That's what happened here, and plenty of interesting things coming in the future. The progress not as fast as FlyPT's mover, but at least I greatly enjoy it, and to me as a noob and programming beginner, that's really something that I really enjoy greatly. If you have any ideas of improvements that you think could be appropriate here, let me know. Bye.